to be eligible to grab anything from previous years, we'd need to have at least put in 30 for this year. So it expunges your limit for this year. And then anything in excess of that then gets applied to the 5th year or the latest one that's available from that perspective.
Yeah. So you can't choose your years. You can't say, I want to, protect the...
Welcome to 360 Money Matters, where financial planners Billy and Andrew talk all things financial planning. This podcast aims to increase your knowledge and confidence with all things money. Each week, they will cover topics such as investing, cash flow, budgeting, saving, passive income, debt management, and much more, so you can live a life on your terms without limits.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the 360 Money Matters podcast. I'm Billy and I'm joined by my co-host,
Andrew. Bills, here we are. We are back again, back on the podcast.
Andrew, we are back again and doing a deep dive today.
Yeah.
This should be good. It's been a while since we've done a deep dive, and hopefully this brings a lot of value to our viewers and our listeners as well. So everybody that we talk to about this in particular is really excited by it. And I'm going to give a little bit away here, but I think it's just because it's an opportunity to pay less tax. I think that's probably the exciting thing.
Everyone loves paying less tax. You and I included.
Absolutely, absolutely. Andrew, we're talking to everybody about boosting superannuation, but using the catch-up contributions that's available inside super. So a lot of people may not necessarily know what this is. Andrew, where do we start? What is it? The good, the bad? There's no ugly, but we'll say the ugly as well too.
Well, we're on the podcast, so there's the ugly. Look, super contributions obviously is what we're talking about here, but in particular we're talking about catch-up concessional contributions. So I think the perfect starting point is, what are concessional contributions first? So concessional contributions are pre-tax money going into superannuation. Now, the easiest way to think about it, or what forms part of most people's concessional contributions, is employer contributions. What that means is that an employer contribution is not taxed at your marginal rate of tax. It goes into superannuation before you pay your personal income tax. That is taxed at 15%. So if you make a concessional contribution into superannuation above and beyond your contributions that your employer is making, if you do a concessional contribution, that contribution is a tax deduction. So you're converting it to pre-tax dollars. So you get a deduction on the amount that you classify as a concessional contribution, and you pay 15% contribution tax into super.
All right, so just to try and clarify a little bit, your employer pays a concessional contribution.
Yep.
So everybody would be used to the 12% that they're receiving from their employer.
Yep.
That's the money that they pay in as part of the employment arrangement that goes directly into super. So that's classified as a concessional contribution. And then if you make a decision to add any money above and beyond that, assuming that you can, I guess the most common way that people do that is through a salary sacrifice arrangement. So that's another form of concessional contribution as well too.
Yep, exactly right. So you can do it through a salary sacrifice, or you can put money in after tax. Claim a notice of intent is what it's called, and it converts it to a pre-tax. Both are going to be the same outcome financially or tax-wise, but one's organised from the employer side, the other's just organised from your bank account side. But a concessional contribution is a pre-tax contribution to super, that in essence reduces the tax that you pay on your taxable income. And if you're paying tax in Australia, the superannuation contribution tax rate is the lowest tax, 15%. So if you're like the vast majority of people and you're paying, upwards of 30% tax, by putting money into superannuation as a concessional contribution or a pre-tax contribution, you're in essence saving money on tax net. And the rate of that saving will depend on what your taxable income is.
Mm-hmm. So in this instance, as it currently stands, the concessional contribution cap or limit each and every year, so we're not talking about the catch-up one just yet, but each and every year you've got a limit of $30,000.
Yep.
So we're not talking about the 30,000, we're actually talking about something different. So the government's got an initiative to help people who have got lower superannuation balances. And the threshold for this to apply is if your balance is under $500,000. So that's the magical number. If your balance is under $500,000, you can go back over a 5-year period. And if you haven't maximized your concessional contribution limit for that year or for those years, you can actually add additional money in to pick up that gap that you've missed out on or left out.
Yep, exactly right. So to reiterate that, 30 grand a year is the limit, or that's what the limit is currently. That has indexed up over the last few years. What we're saying is you can still do the $30,000 in your normal limit, in this year. But if you have a superannuation balance that's under $500,000, now this is as at the 30th of June in the year that or in the previous financial year. So even if you've got a super balance of $499,000 on the 30th of June, super balance increases throughout the year and you're at, over $500,000. Because your balance was under $500,000 on the 30th of June, you can use the catch-up concessional contributions in that year. So bit of a key date around that as well.
Mm-hmm. And in order to have the eligibility, so at the moment we're obviously in the 25-26 financial year, we can go back 5 years, but in order to use any of those previous year's contributions, we have to maximize this year's contribution cap. So like I said, we're in the 25-26 year. In order to be eligible to grab anything from previous years, we'd need to have at least put in 30 for this year. So it expunges your limit for this year. And then anything in excess of that then gets applied to the 5th year or the latest one that's available from that perspective.
Yeah. So you can't choose your years. You can't say, I want to, protect the more recent years and use all the previous years. It automatically gets applied by the ATO. Yep. So you're automatically utilizing this year and then going back to previous years. Bills, look, beyond the obvious that you effectively, and I like to put it in these terms because I think it resonates with people, you're getting a tax deduction for giving your future self money. Yeah. So aside from putting money into superannuation and maximizing your super fund growth, that's obviously the obvious benefit, and we've spoken a little bit about the tax benefits of doing it. Why would you do it? What's a practical example of someone who's considering catch-up concessional contributions?
Look, outside of those two, I think they're the driving reasons why you do it, right? So obviously you want to be able to take advantage of certain opportunities at certain points in time. With that 5-year rule, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So that's one. When your balance gets over $500,000, that window is closed. So if you can take advantage of these things while they're open, I think that just makes sense because you're optimizing your position. Where we tend to see it is probably in one of two places, I think. When somebody's experiencing a career break and it's a good opportunity to be able to put money into super above and beyond to play catch up. So that's probably one thing. The second one that I also think is quite good is if you've got a capital gain in your name. So as an example, if you sell an investment property and you've got a windfall of some money coming in, that amount of money as a capital gain is going to get added to your assessable income. And depending on the gain, it's going to push you up quite high in terms of the effective tax rate that you pay. If you've got some money available in your caps, what you can do is you can put it into superannuation at a tax rate of 15% rather than your marginal tax rate. So realistically, the two that I tend to see the most is if there's a career break and it's just an opportunity, assuming that you've got the cash flow to be able to do it, to be able to get money in. And then the second thing is massaging your tax off a particular event, like a sale of a property where there's a capital gain applicable to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that big capital gain is a really, really common one that we tend to see. There are some other, and you're doing it for a different purpose, but when you're talking about someone who's, let's say in retirement phase, but doesn't have a very large superannuation balance, sometimes what you're doing is pulling money out, putting money back in to, just bring down their assessable income in general. But yeah, for the most parts, those are kind of the big scenarios. And ultimately, the big thing with it is you want to make sure that, one, you're utilizing it as much as you possibly can in the event that there's a circumstance that allows for it. Mm-hmm. But the ramifications of going over are significant.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about that in terms of how would someone track their unused concessional contributions? Like where do you even find that? So you need to go to the super fund?
Yeah, look, MyGov is where it's at.
Yep.
So you look at MyGov, obviously that gets calculated when your tax return gets done each and every year. So that's your source of truth. When we're doing it for clients and making these recommendations, MyGov has got the previous year's contributions. It's black and white. It's fairly straightforward in order to see where it is. And then when you're looking at it, it's pretty evident in terms of what it is. Where people tend to miscalculate or get caught out is what's happening in the current year. So if you're looking at it now, and just to sort of timestamp this, we're in November. So if you're looking at it now and going, okay, I need to maximize my contributions for this financial year, we're in November, we've still got 7 months to go. I've got to hit the $30,000 amount, and then I need to apply whatever I've got to apply in the latest year. If you miscalculate and you do a lump sum now, and then you go over your $30,000 cap, then you can run into trouble by over contributing. So generally what we tend to do is really two strategies. One is you can wait, and you can wait until you've got, a closer line of sight, being, maybe you do this contribution in June, and the error or the position of error is a lot smaller. Or what you can do is make an estimation and maybe leave yourself a couple of $1,000s spare, and then catch that up 15th, 16th, 17th of June, just before the end of the financial year. But MyGov is where it's at. That's where you find the information, and then we'll sort of work backwards from there.
Yeah, and I guess the big thing that, you want to avoid in all of this is you maximize the contribution, and then, albeit it's still positive, but you get a bonus from work that you didn't expect, or your income increases, and as a result, your SGC or the amount of money that's going into super via an SGC increases. And all of a sudden you've breached the cap, and you're either needing to withdraw money or reclassify a portion as after-tax contributions or anything else. I think one of the other things with, or that we tend to see with a catch-up concessional contribution is that this forms part of, one, either a broader strategy. Mm-hmm. So you do it early and you take advantage of compound interest, so that, okay, if you're young, you've got an ability to add a significant amount of money into superannuation. That's going to compound over the next 30 years, and that's going to amplify to an even larger amount. But the other thing that you tend to see with catch-up contributions is it pairing with something else, and it pairing with other strategies, which it normally does when you're receiving advice. It's not usually just on one thing. Whether that's, you consider someone who's downsized and wants to, put a significant amount of money into super. Mm-hmm. Yes, you've got your downsizer contributions, but if you're still earning an income, you probably want to utilize catch-up contributions first, because one, you want to get a tax deduction on the money. You don't want it to be after tax. And two, you want to make that contribution before you breach that $500,000 limit. Or three, you're just trying to maximize how much money you put into super. So maybe you're looking at catch-up concessional contributions, you're looking at downsizer contributions, you're looking at non-concessional contributions. So it usually forms part of an overall strategy, and it usually forms part of a bigger example or a bigger scenario than just a catch-up contribution. Or maybe it's, as you said, we've sold an investment property, we've got a capital gain, let's use either a portion of catch-up contributions to offset some of the tax, but still leave money in a bank account because we still want to have access to it. Who knows? But really, being able to pair this and utilize this as a broader strategy really opens up the options around what you can do.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. And I guess that's the trade-off when we have conversations with people. My starting point is, if there's an opportunity available to optimize your position, that's probably what you lean towards, I guess, first off. And then what you start to do is have trade-off conversations. And look, if it means paying less tax, you kind of put a check in the box and say, yes, that makes sense. We're leaning more towards it. setting yourself up for tomorrow. Yes, obviously, who wouldn't want to do that? But then the position is, okay, if I'm young enough, or young, 39, you lock up that money and you can't touch it until you're retired, essentially. So that's probably the trade-off piece there, going, okay, if I do it, yes, I'm paying less tax, but it means that I've lost access to that money. And am I comfortable enough in terms of my own financial position and the financial setup that I've got? I get the fact that I'm going to pay less tax. I get the fact that, it's going to earn a rate of return and it's going to build for my future. And there's an optimization window here that may not be available in the future, but maybe my financial position doesn't allow me to take $30,000 and tie it up.
Yeah, exactly. But look, some of the other things, that you can, or some of the other things that we do see in this strategy is, let's say someone who's starting to hit their peak income earning years. So where you might utilize your catch-ups is someone is, let's say, over the age, that's not even over the age, someone is earning an income of, say, 200 grand a year. All of a sudden, you've got, say, and I know that it's not the exact number, but you've got, say, 23 and a half odd grand of just employer contributions going into super. If you want a salary sacrifice, because you do probably have the cash flow to be able to do it, sometimes it's, okay, this is going to push us over the $30,000 limit. So let's salary sacrifice, utilize, the last year of contribution. So we're still boosting the superannuation up as much as we possibly can. And utilizing the catch-up contributions, maybe not all in one hit as a contribution, but rather as a regular amount that we're salary sacrificing.
Yeah, and that's a common strategy. So using that example, somebody on 200 grand, you've got the $23,000 that's going in from your employer, 12% contribution. What you might do is, rather than saying, okay, I've got 3 years of catch-up contributions that I'm going to take advantage of, rather than using the 3, what you might turn around is say, I'm just going to knock off the last one.
Yeah.
So the one that's going to drop off first. And that's a good way of not only optimizing, but that's a good way of preserving your cash flow as well too, if you're concerned about locking big amounts of money away. So you stagger it each year and you might say, okay, I've got 3 years of catch-up. What I'm going to do is eliminate one of those each year. And that's also a good way of doing it.
Which is a great way to do it, especially when you consider, most of the decision-making that you're making is when you're considering an investment inside super versus outside of superannuation, the benefit of superannuation is the tax rate. The fact that it's in a lower tax environment, and you want to, theoretically, the thing that will always give you a higher option, because you still have flexibility of investment in the superannuation environment, is super, because the tax rate is lower. But the downside of it is that you can't access the money. So what you might start to do is, or what most people tend to do with their investment strategies is, in the earlier years pre-retirement, you're contributing to super, but not too heavily, because you want to still have liquidity and access to money. And then as you get closer towards the retirement phase, then you're starting to increase super contributions and have less outside of superannuation in contributions, because it's closer it's closer to being able to access that money. And so in this scenario, exactly what you're saying, you might want to bring the catch-ups earlier, even though you do sacrifice an element of liquidity because of that fact, and because you're going to lose that benefit if you don't use it, in essence.
Yeah, and just putting some numbers around that. So using that example before, where someone was earning $200,000 a year, for anything that you put in above and beyond not only your concessional contribution amount to get to the $30,000 cap, but if you bring forward anything as a catch-up contribution, essentially what you're doing is, well, on 200 grand, you're paying 47 cents in the dollar. Basically what that will do is that'll convert your tax rate for the money that you put into super from 47 cents to 15 cents, or 47% to 15%. So you're talking about a tax arbitrage opportunity of 32 cents in the dollar, 32%. It's huge.
Yeah, and it's not like you're, spending the money. You're, in essence, you're giving it to yourself. You're giving it to, a trust that you're going to be able to access at a future point in time.
Well, better to you than to the government, right?
Exactly right.
So there's a Kerry Packer quote somewhere tied in there about,
Yep, absolutely.
I don't, I can spend it better so I don't give them a dollar more than I need to, right? Something like that, yeah.
No, absolutely. Bills, I think that that covers it really well. A bit of a deeper dive into catch-up concessional contributions, what they are, how you can utilize them, and how it can benefit your financial plan. If you do have any questions or you do want to reach out, details of Billy and myself are both in the show notes. And if you got some value out of that one, like, subscribe, and we look forward to catching you on the next podcast.
Thanks. Thanks for listening today. If you have any questions on what we talked about or would like to have a chat about your money journey, visit us at 360fs.com.au. The information in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal objectives, financial situation, or needs. It is not financial, legal, or tax advice and should not be relied upon as such. You should consider whether the information is appropriate to your circumstances and seek professional advice before acting on any of the information provided. Past performance is not a reliable indicator of future performance. This information is provided by Billy Amiridis and Andrew Nicolaou of 360 Financial Strategists Pty Ltd, authorized representatives and credit representatives of Akumin Financial Planning Pty Ltd.